Good morning. Welcome to the National Press Club, the place where news happens. I'm Lisa Nicole Matthews, 114th President of the National Press Club and Assignment Manager for U.S. Video at the Associated Press. Thank you for joining us today for our virtual Headliners Newsmaker with actor and SAG-AFTRA President Gabrielle Carteris. We are happy to accept questions from our audience today, and I'll ask as many questions as time permits. To submit a question, please email headliners@press.org. So last month, one of the most consequential labor battles in decades was joined in Bessemer, Alabama. On the one side stood America's second largest private employer, Amazon. On the other, the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, which was vying to organize the nearly 5,900 workers at Amazon's Bessemer warehouse. Despite celebrity endorsements and the implied support of President Biden, the vote did not go well for the union. Workers voted against organizing by a margin of more than 2-1. Immediately afterwards, many analysts cast the vote as a major defeat for the labor movement. But the union has not conceded. Instead, it moved to challenge the election before the U.S. National Labor Relations Board, arguing Amazon intimidated workers and prevented them from freely exercising their choice. The COVID-19 pandemic has thrown into sharp relief the degree to which Americans depend on frontline workers, such as those at the Bessemer warehouse. And it's raised the issue of how much bargaining power organized labor should have going forward after decades of decline. That question is one today's speaker sets out to answer. Gabrielle Carteris first became a household name playing Andrea Zuckerman, the high school newspaper editor on Beverly Hills 90210, and she recently starred in BH 90210, the revival of the iconic shows, the reboot. Her extensive resume includes work in television, film, and stage, including guest starring roles on NCIS and Criminal Minds, and voice work for video games. For more than a decade, Carteris has been a leader in organized labor for the entertainment industry. As part of the Group for One union, she was instrumental in helping to merge the Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, known as SAG-AFTRA. She was first elected president of SAG-AFTRA in April 2016, and later that year was elected a vice president on the AFL-CIO's Executive Council. She has just also been elected president of the International Federation of Actors. Today, she'll deliver some remarks entitled A Movement in the Making, Worker Power Post-Pandemic. Ms. Carteris, welcome to the National Press Club. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. First, I want to start by recognizing you, the Press Club, and your member journalists and guests for the tremendous work you do. Our union represents thousands of broadcast journalists, and we respect and will continue to defend the important role you play in our democratic society. So thank you for that, for sure. For those of you who don't know me, I am an actor. I got my big break playing Andrea Zuckerman on 90210. But the moment that changed my life didn't actually happen while I was working on 90210. That changed my life. But the moment I'm sharing actually happened to me on a movie set in Canada. Now, I've always considered myself an outspoken person. So when I found myself getting ready to shoot a fight scene with a guy who was 17 inches taller than myself, I actually told the director I didn't feel comfortable. But that's all I said because I didn't want to rock the boat. And when it was time to start the scene, I got ready. The other actor put his arm around my neck. He lifted me by my head and he dragged me down the stairs. And he did that over and over and over again. During a light change, he went to do it one more time. And I finally said to him, stop. Why? Well, because I was actually losing feeling in my hands. I had a headache. My whole body was going haywire. And I didn't realize then that I was becoming partially paralyzed. So I had to leave the shoot for medical care. And on my way out, the assistant director said to me, don't worry about anything, Gabrielle. You just take care of yourself and we'll be there for you. So once I got back to the States, I started seeing specialists, undergoing treatments. And at one of my doctor visits, I got a call from that same assistant director who said to me, Gabrielle, boy, are you lucky that you have insurance through your union. What? I didn't understand what he was saying. And then it dawned on me, my employer wasn't going to be there for me. They were going to abandon me. It was in that moment, that is exactly the moment when I became an activist. I ceased being afraid. In fact, I decided that I was going to rock the boat. I went to the press, I spoke out, and my union had my back. They made sure that I got the support that I needed because that's what unions do. So the producer said, don't worry about Gabrielle, she's just one voice. But what he didn't know is that I was one voice backed by tens of thousands of members. So it's 15 years later, and I am extremely proud to be the president of SAG-AFTRA. And starting this year, I am honored to serve as president of the International Federation of Actors, which is known as FIA, and as a member of the AFL-CIO Solidarity Center Boards of Trustees. Now, as you may have guessed, I am a fierce believer in the power of collective action and the right of workers to join unions, because what I have recognized is no matter where in the world we live, no matter our politics, no matter our background or our age, workers everywhere share the same fundamental desires: to be seen and to be heard, to be treated with respect and dignity, and to belong, because that is what unions are all about. So this is a tumultuous time. I know I don't need to say that to you. We're beginning to emerge from a pandemic that has cost more than 3 million lives and 114 million jobs worldwide. This last year has forced us to confront racism, misogyny, economic inequality, and on top of that, globalization, the rise of technology and automation, and the gig economy are transforming the nature of work. And at the same time, we're in the midst of a political sea change. From the day he took office, President Biden has been focused on repairing the damage caused by the prior administration, which took union busting to new levels. So just last month, President Biden established the White House Task Force on Worker Organizing and Empowerment to help strengthen workers' rights. Yay. To help strengthen this country, he appointed a former union member as Secretary of Labor for the first time in 50 years. 50 years, I want to say that again. And he's not alone in his support for unions. A recent Gallup poll found that 65% of Americans approve of labor unions, the highest number in nearly 2 decades. So despite the challenges we face, we are in a moment of opportunity for unions, for the labor movement, and for workers everywhere. Because if we can seize this moment, this opportunity, we can actually build on the progress workers have made. We can welcome a whole new generation of union members and be a catalyst for the change that we need in our workplaces and beyond. In order to make all this happen, I believe there are 3 things that we need to do. We have to collaborate, we need to embrace change, and we need to think globally, because all of these things will help build worker power. For SAG-AFTRA, the last year has been a masterclass in the importance of collaboration. Many of our members were left without a means of supporting themselves when live performance and filming came to a halt last spring. Our industry was among the first to be shut down. And by May of 2020, 62% of working artists were unemployed. In the second quarter of that same year, 89%, that's right, 89% were out of work. So that's only 11% of our members actively working on SAG-AFTRA contracts. Our industry was in crisis. So what did we do as a union? We leapt into action. SAG-AFTRA Foundation provided more than $6.5 million in relief to our members. We came together with other industry unions, sat down with members, enlisted the help of scientists and medical experts to figure out how to get our industry back up and running with no more closures. And the result was a roadmap. We called that roadmap the Safe Way Forward, and it included everything from strictly enforced testing regimes to zone-based systems and protocols to limit close proximity. And it worked. Under the protocols, we actually saw less than a 1% infection rate on set. Films were able to finish production and new projects got started. In the LA area, production has bounced back to about 60% of normal levels. There's still a long way for us to go, but we could not be prouder of the results. And we know it's not just the arts, because during the pandemic, we saw that union workplaces are safer workplaces. I mean, across the country, healthcare workers fought for and won PPE, hazard pay, and increased staff. At what one hospital nurse in Chicago put it, and I love this, she said, "We wouldn't be alive today if we didn't have the union." So our biggest lesson, when we work together, we can protect workers' health and safety and protect our business. We can create a win-win outcome for entire industries. So that brings me to my second point. It becomes a common refrain throughout the pandemic. It's not one that I love. When I hear, "I can't wait for things to get back to normal." But we can do so much more than just return to normal. We can actually define a new normal. And in order to do that, the labor movement needs to lead. So let's be clear, the labor movement is the worker's best friend. Labor has accomplished a lot in the last 250 years. It's because of unions that we have the 8-hour workday and overtime. And one of my favorite slogans has always been, "Enjoying your weekend, thanks to the labor movement." We know that unions are one of the most effective ways to tackle wage inequality. Union members earn up to 50% more than their non-union counterparts, and union members have helped close the racial wealth gap. Unions help increase wages, benefits, and safe working conditions for non-members as well. It's inclusive. But the truth is, when it comes to young people and others who have not joined or been able to join a union, they are a lot less interested in what we've done and much more interested in where we're going to go, because the world is changing and they want us to be relevant. So take the issue of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. We're experiencing a long overdue reckoning when it comes to the inequalities or inequities that persist in our country and in entertainment and media. For example, we know that the film and television industries are still widely underrepresented of this country. In 2019, the most recent year with data, just a little over a third of speaking characters in film are women. Barely more than a quarter of film leads were people of color, and about 2% were people with disabilities. Shame. It's wrong. Not only morally wrong, but on a business level, it's wrong. It is bad for the bottom line. So let's make more diverse films and television shows, because it is the right thing to do on so many levels. And that's why SAG-AFTRA has worked to create more diverse talent pipelines, because we believe there should be federal tax breaks for entertainment workplaces that hire diverse employees, and that creative professionals, especially from traditionally marginalized groups, should be able to realize the full economic value of their intellectual property. It's not enough to change things around us. We routinely demand greater diversity from our employers across the bargaining table and in our daily interactions. But we need to make the demands for ourselves. That means we have to look within. We have to look around the table in meetings and ask, who is not represented here? It means listening to people of color, women, LGBTQ, people, young people, people with disabilities, about how to make our industries, our workplaces, and our societies more inclusive. Building workplaces that actually reflect the true diversity of this country isn't just the right thing to do. It is the smart thing for the future, and unions can lead that effort. So the third thing that we need to do as a movement is think globally. In our industry, Netflix, Disney, other streaming services are increasing operations around the globe, often forcing substandard contracts on international workers. This is not a faraway problem, because lack of bargaining power abroad impacts the ability to organize here at home. It's not just entertainment and media at all. It is also happening across all sectors. So here's the thing that we need to remember. We are not separate. More and more, it's become apparent just how connected we all are. So we're proud that SAG-AFTRA members benefit from the protections of collective bargaining agreements anywhere they work under Global Rule 1. It is one of the founding principles of our union, because we do not work without a union contract anywhere in the world. And as more and more companies expand their work abroad, anyone invested in the labor movement here in the US should be just as passionate about promoting workers' rights and solidarity across all borders. If we can do all of these things, collaborate, change, think globally, we can take unprecedented leaps forward when it comes to building worker power. What does building worker power look like in 2021? Well, for starters, it looks like passing the Protecting the Right to Organize, or the PRO Act. This would be the most significant worker empowerment legislation since the Great Depression. It would hold corporations accountable for union busting, protect workers' ability to form and join unions, including in new industries like big tech, what Lisa was discussing, and repeal the so-called right to work laws. Above and beyond the PRO Act, there's so much more that we can do to promote worker power, like advocating for much needed investments in infrastructure, supporting clean energy jobs in the fight for climate change, passing the Paycheck Fairness Act, and ensure that women are paid equally for our work. Come on, guys, it is only 2021, so it is about time. A few years ago, I was interviewed for a documentary about women's fight for better representation in entertainment, and I began to recount the story of my career. And I actually started to cry because I thought about the accident on that set in Canada and how long it took me to say stop. I thought about the years I did not rock the boat. And I realized that every time I felt uncomfortable and didn't say anything, that represented someone down the road who I did not protect. Here is what drives me now. Every time we take action or make our workplaces safer, countless people's lives will be better for it. There is no more important example than SAG-AFTRA's 2 new initiatives to end sexual harassment. It is the first ever industry-wide accreditation for intimacy coordinator training and a new digital tool for members to report harassment rights from their smartphones. They say with age comes wisdom. So I will admit to you, I just turned 60 years old, and I spend a lot of time trying to tell my daughters the things no one was able to tell me. I want them to know their boundaries and refuse to be treated badly. I want them to rock the boat. And that's why I'm in the fight. That's why I'm proud to be a union worker. And that's why I know that if we can rise to meet this moment, the same labor movement that built the middle class in America can build the future I want for all of our children. Thank you. Strengthen unity.
All right. Gabrielle, rock the boat, woman. Rock the boat. You know, I have to say that some of the things that you were saying, there's a lot for us to unpack in everything that you presented there. But, you know, just the other week, we were talking to Joe Manchin and the mine workers, UMWA, about some very, very similar, you know, issues. And they mentioned the PRO Act, and we got the big surprise from Joe Manchin at the top of the show. So, you know, talk about just how important labor solidarity is, and not just from the perspective of SAG-AFTRA,
right,
across industries.
For me, I clearly, as I said, I am a major advocate for solidarity, and for us as labor across in every sector, the most important thing, it's the way to give voice to people. We actually, as individuals, are sometimes virtually powerless because of corporations being so large and lacking maybe that human, you know, touch. So I feel that right now, unionism in this country is the thing that will actually free people to feel empowered and to live better lives. And it's imperative that we actually let everybody rise together. The disparity between the haves and the have-nots are too vast. And it's really labor that will actually bring us together and create a healthy body for this country, which will allow us to have a healthy future. I can't even stress it enough.
You know, you talked about protocols, you know, post-pandemic, although I think we're technically a long way off from truly being post-pandemic.
Just on that edge of seeing hope. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now that TV production, film production is ramping back up, what's your biggest concern about production safety in a purgatory COVID world,
All right.
if I can say that.
Well, so yes, we're not quite there at the end. And I think that's the thing. It's not wanting, people are feeling that fatigue of, all the PPE and the protections and the rules. But I really hope that people with that fatigue understand that we're not nearly at the end. We know new variants are possibly going to be coming into this country. We have to be vigilant. So I guess what I would say to people who are working on sets is that we are working in collaboration with the other unions and the studios as well. We want to make sure that we can keep the industry open. We will try to adjust as we move forward, but please don't give up on what we put forward, because having less than 1% contamination issues, or infection rates, is due to the diligence of our members. So I would say stay with it, because we are, as you said, in purgatory post. We're not quite there yet. And it's important for us to be aware of that, even though we're tired. This is the time that our true strength comes in the courage to stay strong and pay attention.
Yeah, with all of those changes in terms that the industry had to implement because of the pandemic and ways of shooting more safely, I'm wondering, are there any practices in the industry that were going on before the pandemic that you hope will go away now that standards have been lifted?
All right, say the first part again of that question. I apologize.
Oh, no, it's all good. The pandemic basically forced the industry to adapt to shooting safely.
Yes.
Are there any industry practices basically from before the pandemic that you hope will go away? I mean, where they had to boost the standards, but there were obviously some things that were going on prior to pre-pandemic that weren't so great for folks on set, just like your situation in Canada. Are there some specific practices that you hope will disappear? Because
well, I mean, I can say it has nothing to do necessarily with the pandemic. The things that we're working to make sure they disappear were pre-pandemic for centuries. I would say that would be sexual assault and harassment. And I would also say that it's sexually explicit scenes. So what we've seen in the last 5 to 7 years, exponential growth in hyperexposed work being done on camera for television, not just film. And what I'm hoping to see, due to the protocols that we put in place, the accreditations, we put together an accreditation and registry for intimacy coordinators. Those are the liaisons for actors, between the actors and the production and director, to help almost kind of choreograph the kind of explicit scenes you see. We want to make sure that we can expand that universe of intimacy coordinators, so that no time, as our industry is changing and you're seeing more explicit hyperexposed work, will our members be subjected to the risk of assault. And we want them to, so that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping we're going to see through the things that we've implemented, where members feel more empowered, they have a voice to what they need. So there's a lot of things that we've tried to do during this period.
Yeah, you mentioned the improvement to on-screen intimacy guidelines and things like that. That's super important. How do you sustain the momentum, I guess, that's been going since Me Too and issues of improving diversity and representation within the industry? How do you sustain the momentum there?
We sustain it by not just talking about it. We sustain it by actually creating actionable steps so that we can create true systemic change. Because the issues that we are seeing and the reason we're approaching them, that what you heard from the Me Too moment, which actually happened earlier than the Weinstein moment, revisited again, that has been something that's been ongoing. We need to find, everybody agrees when you have a conversation that it's wrong. The casting couch is wrong. It's wrong that anybody should feel at risk on set when it comes to hyperexposed work. It's wrong. But the way that we create real change is by putting and implementing actions that people can go and adhere to, because it's not enough to talk, and again, like I said, and think about it. We have to give steps. So we were very active. One of the ways that we create the real systemic change that we're looking for is by implementing programs and projects, and by communicating and talking and hearing about what's going on. And what we're hoping is through the intimacy coordinator registry that we've created and accreditation that we're going to be able to do sustained change. And what we're hoping is with our sexual harassment app, the self-reporting app that we've created within our own union for our members, specifically just for our members, because there are other apps outside, but we wanted to make sure there was a safe space where this information could be stored. We created this app, and we're hoping with that way of communicating and people being able to report that they will actually help to change the environment and the way it's been. And I think that it's very important because as we go, if we can take these steps and create strong actions, then we will see real change.
Now, you gave us a shout out to broadcast newsrooms in particular at the top. And, as a former union member, I can't be a union member now because I'm in management.
Yes.
But thanks a lot for that because, it's a lot of work. And I recognize that on a personal level that has to be done. I'm wondering, you were really key in the merging of the union set. And we don't see that same level of unification coming together between broadcast unions and print unions, the ones that are used by mainstream newspapers like the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune. And then we've got reporters that have formed their unions that are affiliated, with like the News Media Guild, the writers, the WGA. What are you doing, or are you talking to leaders of those unions to maybe bring everybody together in a better way to move forward?
Well, we always are. We're always interfacing with all the different unions. And what we work on, though, in our organization, we actually represent a great number of broadcast reporters. So for us, even during this pandemic, which has been, so striking, we have organized many shops this whole last year. So for us, it's really about, we want to be there to protect and support and give voice to the people who are working. And, the broadcasters really are on the front lines. I do want to give a shout out. I said it earlier, but you really have been our frontline workers in so many ways. You became the eyes and voice to this country, and for us to be able to know exactly what was going on in real time. And I cannot say how grateful we are to that. But we interface with other organizations, but the organization that we focus on is clearly ours in terms of what our members need. Right. But we do programs with other, unions, and we hope that who represent, and we are always looking to find a way to come together, because really the truth is, as you know, being a union member, that our strength comes in our unity. It comes in our ability to work together as a whole.
Yeah. Former union member, but yes.
No, we'll always hold you close to our heart.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. What advice do you have for broadcast journalists who are employed in right to work states? What advice do you have for those folks who are fighting the good fight?
I say, keep fighting the good fight. We are looking to, we're looking to actually help flip those states, right to work states. Actually, we just did that a couple of years ago, the first time I think in history that we were able to flip a right to work state into a non-right to work state. We're here to help you. And I know it's challenging to be in a right to work state, but if you work under a SAG-AFTRA contract, you actually, and we do have stations in right to work states, you will have the protections of our contract. But what I would say is, help us fight the legislation that will flip those states, because we need to make sure, no matter where you work in this country, that you have a voice and the opportunity to organize and to use that collective voice to get the protections that you deserve.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you a question that goes back to SAG-AFTRA specifically, that actually comes from one of our viewers. Mm-hmm. SAG-AFTRA Health Fund no longer counts income from residuals towards qualifying for health care. So by doing this change last year, the union cut off mostly older workers from their healthcare benefits and eliminated health insurance for as many as 12,000 health plan participants. So how do you answer charges in a lawsuit from Ed Asner, Morgan Freeman, and some others that what SAG-AFTRA has done basically amounts to age discrimination?
There's a lot in that basket there, right? So
Yeah,
let's
there
talk
is.
about even, I was affected by the changes that occurred. It was not pointed at anybody. If we really look at the last couple of years, our health system is in crisis. It's a broken system. I think the pandemic exacerbated that situation, and we saw health plans around the country trying to adapt so they can survive to go and support, their members moving forward. And it was painful. It was painful. It was painful for me, but I recognize what's taking place. I know that when, this year I lost my insurance because there was no work. Every year we have to obtain it. But I know it's not about, first of all, the union is separate. I don't know that everybody knows that. The union is separate from the health plans. They are two separate organizations. I'm not a trustee on that, so I can't really speak to any kind of legal actions that are going on. But what I can speak to is the fact that we are fighting, when you see what's gone on with the COBRA subsidies, that was, I like to say part of that is a direct result of our activism within Washington. We saw what was going on and what's happening as a result of the broken system in our country. We wanted to make sure that our members were counted in that subsidy, because the truth is our work patterns are different. So sometimes the language did not help to support our members in getting some of the benefits that the rest of the country got. And we were successful. That's those COBRA subsidies that now are there to help our members came from us really there advocating, and we'll continue advocating and working on it. But the most important thing for us to remember is that we do have to work on the healthcare in this country. Every citizen deserves and has a right to have healthcare. And I think that it's important for us to see where the real issues lie.
So let me ask you a more general labor question then. There's been a lot of talk that the next leader of the AFL-CIO should be a woman. And I know you don't want to get into politics, but can you weigh in on that discussion and what we're going to see post-Trumpka? Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get into other organizations and what they're saying, and we are apolitical, but I support the idea that, what we see at the top is really going to be the reflection of what we see in the workforce. So we have very, very strong leadership as female leadership in the AFL-CIO. And as when the time comes when Rich decides that it's time to move on, I hope that he actually will be supportive of seeing a female in the leadership role. I think it's time. It reflects the very thing that we talk about, where we see the lack of equity in so many different ways. One of the places we see it is with women and being represented on an equal playing field. Having a woman in leadership can help all ships rise.
So not to jump on it too much, but it's Liz Shuler and Sarah Nelson. I guess they're the top two leading contenders that folks are talking about. Are there particular strengths that either of them have that you would like to see?
I think they're both very, go ahead.
Or I would ask you, would you consider running for president of a labor federation?
I have enough on my plate. Thank you very much. I know Sarah and I know Liz. Clearly, I work very closely with Liz, being on the board, the executive board. She has incredible experience. She has been there at ground zero, a female in leadership, the only female when you look amongst an all group of men, who's actually gone through the process of working through and helping labor. She has a deep understanding. And I think that, both women are, very, very bright and have great leadership capabilities. And just to say that Liz has been here for a long time, and I think that she reflects the voice of an understanding of many of the people in the labor movement.
Did your experience playing a newspaper editor on 90210 help you at all or prepare you at all for your work representing the interest of journalists as a union leader? Just curious.
No, I don't think, you have to remember it was a role I played.
I know.
I do have to say that it was a role I played with incredible pride, because I do believe and love the work that journalists do. So how great to be able to play a role that I really believe and support.
All right. Well, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about what's going on with the Golden Globes this week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, they've got their own set of issues. Of course, they put on the Golden Globes. And I have so many questions around this, but first of all, do you think the Globe should return? Because NBC has said they're not going to carry it. And
well, they're not carrying it for next year.
For next year, yeah.
Right.
Okay. And what do you think about SAG-AFTRA awards taking a bigger role in Hollywood's awards season?
Well, I say SAG-AFTRA actually has a big place in award season, and I hope to continue seeing it expand. I have to say, it is one of the most exciting award shows. When you think about it, it is the only award show out of all of them where it's peer-to-peer recognition. So when to sit in the room, and I've been in all of the rooms, to sit to all of them, when you have to wear those dresses. This year was a good year. But the idea is to be able to be in a room, this room, and to see the camaraderie and that feeling of when everybody says, I am an actor, and to say that with incredible pride, and to know it was their fellow actors that are recognizing them. There's no higher honor, I think, than peer-to-peer recognition. Also, what I love about the awards is, if you're going to talk about overall, we are the one award that actually expresses and shows diversity and inclusion. That has never been an issue for us, because our members are truly diverse. Our members are this country, and we actually look to reflect the American scene in everything we do. And I think we've been very successful with that in the SAG Awards. So do I want to see it grow and continue? Absolutely. I have incredible pride in working with our fellow members on that, and seeing how we celebrate each other's work.
Yeah, so the big stink, though, is basically about the fact that the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, they don't have any Blacks on the group. It's a very small group. What would be your advice to the HFPA on how to get their act together?
So I don't want to go and advise another organization, but I'll say overall, what I'd like to say is I think that this is a time of reckoning. And it's easy to talk the talk, and I think it's time for everybody to start walking the walk. So whatever people need to do to get to that place of true inclusion, then please do it.
I got to say that I was really, really surprised. And, as a journalist myself, I'd heard, so many stories over the years about there not being diversity. But when how many times does an organization have to be told, or how many times does that story have to come up for some action to be taken? And I just could not believe they did not have a single Black voting member among them.
You know what? We have to take a look at, when I say looking in our own homes, I really believe that people, all our organizations, all of us have to start looking within, because you're right. What you're saying, how many times, it's not just there. How many times we have to have this conversation? How many times? That's why when I talk about the protocols we've implemented regarding sexual assault or harassment, the things that we're putting in place, because enough talk that clearly it's not enough to understand that there's an issue. We have to actually put systems in place to change, so that we can really have systemic change. It has been decades. To speak to you, you're a Black woman. You have heard this for your entire life. So right. You must be exhausted. Like you're saying, really? When does that come to Jesus moment happening? Right. So I think that this is a really when I say this is a painful time, but it is a time of incredible opportunity. And I support everybody in leaning into this and really thinking about what they can do actionably to make a change, not just to acknowledge it, which is important. You have to acknowledge it. But once you've done that, what are you going to do to change it? And I think you're hearing from, from our country and from the world overall, change. Time is now. Let's change.
Yeah, I think Tyler Perry probably said it best at the awards show the other day, and he also, I think, instituted some of those first really serious COVID protocols.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can go back to those, can you talk a little bit more specifically about what kinds of protocols have been instituted, and if you've heard any complaints from directors and actors who are like, I don't want to do it that way, or I don't want to wear a mask, or I don't want to stand 6 feet, or I can't do that scene that way.
Right. Well, first of all, because of the protocols and how we've set them up, there's not a big limitation on scenes, right? We needed to create a structure that was really safe, and working in collaboration with the other unions, the DGA and IATSE, and others. What it's allowed us to do is talk about the whole crew, not just for the actors. The protocols are based on protecting everybody because we want them to be able to stay working. And so we really, science is what we followed. We have, every union has their own epidemiologists. We have, the studios have epidemiologists. We're talking with scientists. We're looking at the CDC. We are following very closely what's taking place. We don't want it to be based on false information. The protocols were designed to support the information that's been shared. And that's why we have been successful, and there's less than a 1% infection rate. Are people tired of it? Well, as I said, there's fatigue, more than that, though, I'm hearing gratification. I worked on a set just a month and a half ago. I was shooting a film, and I had to fly to Washington. So we're still in the pandemic. It wasn't even quite the post, but what did you call it? The
Purgatory.
Purgatory post. It wasn't quite that time yet. And I was a little anxious to go. I had not received my vaccination. I have now, but at that time I hadn't. And I was extremely happy to be working under those protocols. I was happy to be with people. I miss people. I do Zoom all the time. To be interfacing with, my fellow performers and crew, and was fabulous. And I felt safer there than I do in the grocery store, safer there than when I'm on the street. So overall, I have to say it's been overwhelming. We are continuously evaluating those protocols because we're getting more and more information. As things change, we're going to go and adapt to make sure that there's safety, but that there's going to be, you'll see that we'll be looking at how do we need to wear masks outside? The CDC has now made that announcement that it's not. So we're exploring, well, is there a time now? Are we coming to that where we're going to be releasing that? The real important thing, and I would stress this, if you can, and you're able to for health reasons, I really hope people get the vaccine. I mean, we need to liberate our country. We need to be able to, and actually the world, we have to stop this pandemic has ravished us as a society. And the real way for us to get out of it is to do everything we can. And one of those things are the vaccines. It's phenomenal how quickly, they came out. I think the efficacy has been shown to be meaningful. Seeing our numbers decrease the way they are, we want to keep it that way. So I urge everybody, if you're tired of getting tested, and if you're tired of wearing the masks, and if you're tired, let's get vaccinated and let's stop this this terrible pandemic from doing any more harm.
It's a great message. So a question from a viewer that is a little off topic, but I've heard this question before. So if professional wrestlers are considered actors or athletes, is it time to organize professional wrestlers, and is SAG-AFTRA going to get involved in that?
Well, you know what? We support everybody. You hear me saying it, in being represented by a union. We we know that, they are athletes. The work that they're doing out there on camera is really tiring on the body. And we have been in conversations to support them in organizing the way it's going to be best suited for them. But they have to make that decision to do the reach out. They need to make the decision on where they're best represented. But more importantly is that it's really a very difficult occupation. And we want to make sure that we support them having the protections they deserve. It's harrowing for them. But again, that's something that we can help to, guide them on or support them. But in the end, it will always be the workers who will have to make the decision.
Another question from our audience that is generally labor related, and I guess if you put on your AFL-CIO hat for this one, the president has moved swiftly to make changes at NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, to end those anti-union policies for federal workers and support the PRO Act, which you talked about in your remarks. But there's always been this discussion around the situation with privately funded prisons. So should prison labor be banned as well as the privatization of prison facilities, in your opinion, without getting political?
I actually think it's a topic that's not really a part of our SAG-AFTRA universe and the work that we're doing. The most important thing is that we find ways to make sure that people are safe and protected, and that we have to explore it. So I trust that there will be an exploration of what's taking place to make sure that if things have to change, that will happen. And of course, we support always for people to be able to go and have the protections they need. But I think that that's something that they will have to work out within their own home.
I have to go back and ask you on the PRO Act. I mean, have you been in touch directly with any folks on the Hill who are supporting? Like I said, Joe Manchin came out in support of it, surprisingly, the other week, right here at the National Press Club. Who else is on your side for the PRO Act, or who else is promoting what you want to see move forward with the PRO Act?
We've been very in conversations with Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and talking about, the PRO Act is very important. So we're very actively involved with it as an organization. And of course, our work through the AFL-CIO allows us to be actually deeper in that conversation. We are working collaboratively with everybody because we believe that the PRO Act is really what's going to help workers have a voice. We need to make sure, just the idea that an employer could be fined for trying to influence is if that's going to be the incentive to stop them from allowing people, so that to stop the employers, if that's going to be the incentive so that workers really can have a voice and feel empowered, then I say, yes, I hope this happens. But we are absolutely very deeply involved with this conversation. We want to make sure it succeeds because we believe it, again, that will help all workers. It will help. And ultimately, that means it helps our country. And if it helps our country, well, that's what we're here for.
All right. Before I ask the final question, let me take a moment to thank the organizers of today's event, Headliners co-team leaders Donna Leinwan and Lori Russo, today's headliner event coordinator Andrew Schneider, Club Communications Director Lindsay Underwood, and Club Executive Director Bill McCarron. And I have to say a big shout out to our Broadcast Operations Center crew, which is always in my ear. Thank you guys for everything you do in our Zoom world. I'd also like to tell you about some upcoming National Press Club headliners. On May 13th, we'll hear from Mark Bittman, former New York Times columnist, food writer, and best-selling author, who will discuss his new book, Animal Vegetable Junk, A History of Food from Sustainable to Suicidal. And on May 19th, we'll recognize both National Bike Month and National Melanoma Awareness Month with Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Elizabeth McGowan, who will discuss her memoir, Out Peddling the Big C, My Healing Cycle Across America. So we hope you'll join us for that. Now for our last questions. And I know that you said that you don't want to get political, Gabrielle. Oh, let me just tell you this. You look fantastic for 60. I want whatever you're doing. I want that. Okay. I want you to share that.
I'm actually 100 years old. That's what I
look. Is that what's going on there? You look good, girl. You look good. You look great. But I have to ask you,
okay,
Liz Cheney, what's going on the Hill, and what do you think about that? I mean,
well, you were on the Hill, so you know what's going on. And I would say you're right. We're not political, but I say I believe that people should speak the truth. And so I say courage. Courage is our leader, and I commend her for speaking her truth. I think that it does take incredible courage to face, to say that up front to people who are very powerful, and to say it with such dignity and pride. I really, I commend her. I have deep respect for that.
Yeah, the whole situation on Capitol Hill does really have people talking, even though it seems it's a very inside baseball situation. It's something that kind of reverberates across our country, I think. Even into the annals of labor unions and things that we do every day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk a little bit about, I mean, to me, and looking out, this seems like between 2020 and now, mm-hmm. women have been making so many strides. I mean, for you, you're not only, you know, a woman, but you're also the first American woman to lead the labor union out there. Talk about, you know, your engagements on the labor front and how you know, kind of set your space, you know, as a woman in the labor fight.
Well, first of all, in the labor fight, I do it as a human being. It's not gender specific. I happen to be a woman. I believe, though, that we are healthier when we really are inclusive and reflective. Over, you know, half of our society is women. So I think it's important to make sure that our voices are present. I also believe that the responsibility of, as women leaders, is for us to make sure that we lift up the voices of other women, that we don't just say we fought so hard to get here on our own, so it's every person for themselves. I don't believe that's true. And I believe it's in our sisterhood together to be able to raise people who are actually very equipped to do the work. That is, as long as we can expand that voice of inclusion for women and for people of color and for really inclusive of our American scene, if we can really do that, we will be better for it. We will be richer for it. And so I try to make sure that whenever I seat a committee, whenever I work with creating any kind of group, that it is a group that is balanced, that it is reflective of everybody, and that takes time, right? It's easy to go to the place that everybody knows because it's been there. The resources are there. They've been established, but we need to create more access points. So as a woman in leadership, I believe that that's my job. I try to create more access points for people to come in because I do believe that we're better for it. And if we could all really lean into that, instead of being afraid that we're going to lose our position, but rather that we're actually making things better, we will be better and healthier for it. So that's how I do it. That's what I believe in. I look for advice and collaboration in what I do. It's not just me, it's all of us together. And so, and it's an interesting journey. I am seeing a shift, but I don't want it to be just a moment and a flavor of the month. I want to see the real change again, not just to talk about it, not to be reactive, but to be actually creative and supportive and meaningful. That's what I want. So that's what
It's
my
totally a process.
it
And
is
you
process.
can't turn on a dime on
Right.
anything that I think folks in any movement are trying to do.
Right.
So
It does take time. People, it's so interesting because people will say, well, do this, this, and this. And I'm like, it's a great idea, but now we have to find the way to get there. And not only how to get there in the moment, but how to sustain that moment. And that takes real work and time. And that does take courage. And it takes listening, and it takes patience. But I believe that if we do it right the first time, no regrets, right? You don't want to have to go backwards. That takes even more time, and it's more painful, and it creates loss. So if we can do it right the first time and people can really focus on that, we will be great at what we do.
So you didn't want to get political, but I think you just offered our folks on the Hill some great advice.
Think they're going to take it?
Who knows? Who knows? Gabrielle Carteris, thank you so much for joining us here at the National Press Club. We appreciate your time and your remarks today on the importance of solidarity and the post-COVID world. Thank you.
Almost. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. It was really wonderful being with you. Thank you.
Thanks.